Good evening, gents. Great to see you again. So the point of this call is just to talk about coaching at UBRFC and get everybody's views on why they coach and what they've enjoyed about coaching at University of Bristol Rugby Club, our principles, our processes, what we've learned, the challenges, all of that sort of stuff to share out, really. So I'll probably kick off with Shano because he's the longest serving man besides myself, because when I walked through the door of UBRFC 5 seasons ago now, one of the first phone calls to somebody I trusted who had a massive amount of experience that I'd worked with in a pretty challenging environment before as well, or a couple of environments. So I guess, Shano, the first question is, why did you say yes to me?
Yeah.
And have you enjoyed it? And what did you learn?
Well, mate, it was a no-brainer, really, because I think it was a step up from the coaching I'd done before at sort of in the Bristol combination. You sold it as well as a real sort of project, as a real starter project, you know, that we were coming in and wanting to start this new era of coaching with UBRFC after a very different coaching, you know, whole coaching setup and strategy and philosophy beforehand. And it was a real exciting challenge, really. And to be able to work for that a length of time with group of players, you know, because we were on, I mean, we were doing like 20 hours a week then, I think, in that first year, weren't we? I mean, even me as a part-timer.
Yeah.
And it was just a real good challenge to get in there. And working with you and knowing your coaching style and philosophy and the way we wanted to play just was a really exciting challenge. I've never got my hands that deep into a group of players, if you know what I mean. Rather, because if you're coaching in a combination side, you could coach the first team, second team, third team, and then on a Saturday you go with the first team. But this was at a whole different level, and I know you've been working with Bath, and you've been working with mate, brain's gone. Give me a clue.
Others. Well, yeah, in terms of my
4D, you've been working with 4D, and I really wanted to see.
And yeah, a few others. So. Yeah, no, I think that's spot on. It was one of those interesting times, wasn't it, where we also had a blank canvas, didn't we? So I guess that was the fun part about it, was that my philosophy at that time was all about, you know, get the technical sorted out and get the tactics right and kind of just see the lay of the land, wasn't it? And then we realised the scale of the project was dealing with 5-6 teams, you know, the biggest rugby club in Bristol. A lot to learn, and looking back on it, massive lessons in cultural development and man management and understanding the politics, managing up and managing down and setting up a committee. And obviously it's a student-led club, so it's a massively powerful program to develop people, let alone student rugby players or professional rugby players in a few cases as well. So yeah, I think Si, you've obviously come from different environments, both coaching and playing. How have you found, you know, when you came in, 3 seasons ago now?
Yeah, 3 seasons. So yeah, it's so for me, again, another challenge. I mean, I've always been on the grassroots side, so you know, coaching in clubs, you know, fairly good level of rugby clubs, level 5, level 6, good standard, but obviously dealing with players from all walks of life. And you know, and then so the challenge, as you mentioned earlier on, is the culture within the club, and obviously being a very student-led, which is right, the environment within the university, but very different from a club environment where you're working with an 18, 19-year-old, and then you're working with a guy who's 35, 36, 40-year-old who's a builder down the road. So you've got so many different variables and players to work with. So that's what I found fascinating about working with the guys. I mean, for me, the level, the ability of the guys to learn and to develop what excites me about being at Bristol University. I mean, the level of standard of playing and the capability of players to get better is huge.
And I think that's something that we've not really hit our straps on yet, is it? Because it takes time to change a culture, to evolve the players and get that standard there, wasn't it? And I think, you know, dealing with 18-year-olds right through to 24-year-olds, medics, all different courses, all different backgrounds, as you say. It's a massive challenge to be able to mold them, but also at this age, some are really malleable and you can inspire them, and others, you know, are kind of on a different level, which is the great thing about the club, that they're just there for the complete social and the fun element, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
How have you found the balancing act between those two elements? Because you've obviously done both in the club as well.
Yeah, tough, because you don't really, it's hard to get to know the guys because of the actual only time limit we have with them. And then to understand that when you're a young player coming into the club, of course you're going to say you've got ambitions to be the best player you can, you know, but then you only understand what their real desire is, probably 6 months to a year, even 18 months, 2 years down the line, to understand the real desire, the real want. Ultimately, like if you want to get better, you have to want it, you have to do it.
Yeah.
And I understand, which took me a little while, is the actual desire to do it. And then you understand these guys have got other interests, degrees, other areas they're going to go into.
I totally agree with you on that side, because also I think a lot of the players don't know at the time.
100%.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
when they first come, because you don't know what it takes. I mean, getting that exposure to the S&C and the whole lifestyle stuff, if you really want to go next level, and they probably don't quite know that at the start as well. And it's a whole, you've got to go through that with it, you know, with the players as well.
Yeah.
And I think I probably didn't say that as well. One of the things that really got me in was I'd done a lot of work with like the Youth Sport Trust and developing fundamental programs, and I really like working with young people and kids, and because you can see that development take place a lot more than you can with sort of an adult who's a more fully formed player, if you like. So yeah, I'm with you on that side. Good one.
Yeah. So obviously you're the last man in and most recent as the club manager and really the custodian at the moment for the development side of the rugby club as we move to the future of it. How have you found coming into the environment, both culturally and tactically and technically, getting to know everything? Has it been a challenge? Has it been an enjoyable one?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a bit of a shock, really. I think when I learned about, you know, the position and things, and I knew it was a good level of rugby, but I didn't realise the desire of so many of the lads to shine, as it were. It was way more than I thought. I thought there would be a lot more lads that were just there to, you know, have a beer, make a mate, you know, make some friends and have some really good times, which there are those people, aren't there? But
what's the important part of it?
Yeah, of course. But I was so shocked by the amount of lads that really, really wanted to play to their best of their abilities. And
yeah,
you know, there is a lot of them, isn't there, that, you know, 50 plus that really want to, and maybe more, because, you know, there's first years that really want to be there, you know, that potentially weren't last season, that will be this season. So yeah, it was great to see, really. It's a really exciting place to, you know, to coach rugby, to watch players develop, because, you know, you're seeing some lads that probably, I think, weren't incredible at school. You know, maybe they were like, you know, bottom of the 15, as it were. But, you know, as their bodies are developing, especially, you know, those first years, and seeing them, some of them are really like becoming decent players, and you can tell that they're going to have something about them that maybe they don't even believe it at the moment. Do you know what I mean?
I think that's been the thing that's come through for me over the years, is that, especially with some of the example players who have just been grafters, is a realization that, you know, a coaching team is part of it. I guess our role is facilitation ultimately, but as you guys alluded to there, if they want to work hard enough, the resources and support is there from the FC and getting the performance, lifestyle, living stuff right, but also teammates who want to help them. So teammates that might not want to go on that journey to the very top, but they want the team to be at the top, and they want to be the best. And so they're willing to support each other and also really accommodating of everybody as well. So it doesn't matter your background or where you want to go, or, you know, they'll rein someone in who's not behaving well, etc. But otherwise, you know, it's just so welcoming as an environment, and also challenging. I mean, some of the best experiences of my time there have been, crikey, I remember a pretty wet night, Shano, with a session that wasn't going to plan with two squads on there, and being challenged with Dave Watchorn and Max Cresswell face to face, and like, you guys need to get a grip of this. And I'm like, yeah, but we've kind of teed this up. I remember the session where we'd set it up to go, look, this is going to be chaos, and it's been set up on purpose, and I'm seeing how you lot deal with it. And basically it was like the leadership development side of it, wasn't it? Which has been an important part of our roles to try and enable these young men to develop into quality leaders, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, there was some interesting times, especially when before the 3G in the mud, in the pit. And sometimes it was just 40 minutes of absolute carnage in the pit, and the guys won't know now, but down behind sort of the bottom corner of the 3G was behind the fence, wasn't it? It was the only place we could train in the floods at 8:30 on a Friday night, and guys just bashing lumps out of each other. That was fun. That was a house of pain, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We don't quite have that these days. These days on the 3G, it's not quite the same.
Bring that back, mate. We need to
it was like Spartacus in the pit in series 2. It was amazing.
Just picking up on that leadership bit was really interesting. That's what I found. Really good. Comparing it with, the grassroots sort of rugby club era. It is trying to identify those leaders and in creating leadership groups and creating that empowerment of these young men, because maybe they've not been used to it or that environment. And then if you go into a rugby club environment, on a Tuesday, Thursday night, you have those natural leaders because they're doing it in their day life already. So you have a 29-year-old guy who's a project manager of a company, and he naturally leads it. So he comes into the club and it's already there, and you can identify quickly. But with our environment, which I think is important, is we do empower those players to step up and also change around, because as you mentioned then, you see guys develop at different stages. And it's interesting to hear what Ollie just said about those guys who develop at different stages. And that's what happens. You have different stages of development, and then it's about introducing those leaders in times, and it changes around. And I found already the last 3 years, you've seen guys then eventually pop up to become leaders after being in the environment, and the chest gets prouder, and their confidence comes out. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think where we've challenged them ultimately, it's been some of the toughest things to do has been challenge them, hold them accountable, and the more senior players to start realizing their role and what is a good leader, the resourcefulness, the empathy, the ability to communicate to groups, but also on an individual basis to inspire, all of these factors. The values they've got to walk as well as talk has been the biggest thing as well. And it's been great to see how so many of them develop in this environment, but not immediately, which is also really rewarding. Like some of the leavers have been really great to have conversations with when they're coming back and going, I actually realized why you were that way, because obviously sometimes I'm the dark knight, aren't I? Sometimes I'm light, sometimes I do a job that is good, and sometimes I do a job that no one wants to do, but it's got to be done, and it isn't the nicest. And I'm not always that popular, but the reality is that it's for, in my opinion, and hopefully, taking into account all of your opinions and senior players and leadership groups, I'm doing things for the right reasons to get the best results, to drive this rugby club forward and help these boys, achieve their potential ultimately. Slims, how have you found the leaders and the various groups in those lower teams that you particularly work with? Because obviously Shane Sy and I drop into them over the last couple of seasons now and again, having worked with performance groups, but the big one here is the mix of first and second years with third and fourth years is far greater in those lower sides. Do you think the leadership groups work? Do they make a difference?
Yeah, definitely, and particularly at the start of the season when there's so many, newbie players joining in, and first years, just joining the rugby club and the university and the city, which is quite a lot to deal with. Those, older players do take that leadership role, and they do, but towards the end of the season, it's just like one big group of people, and there's leaders throughout, which I saw last year, which is brilliant. At the start, there was 2 or 3 older boys that took control and, dealt with the socials and dealt with, what they got to wear on the bus and all that malarkey. But by the end of it, there was personalities coming left, right and centre. And that's, that's credit to the rugby club and credit to those, those leaders of allowing everyone, to feel welcome and join in. And you know, in the rugby as well. And by the end of the season, you know, you wouldn't even know what year those pupils are in, really, the students are in. You wouldn't know if you just walked onto a rugby pitch, bar potentially a bit of physicality, you wouldn't know. And that's because personalities are coming through, and good place to be.
That has taken a fair while to develop, to be fair. Like, well, I think Joe would agree, when we first came there, it was very hierarchical, you know. But there was you know, you were fresh or you were so-and-so, and there were, if somebody's, you know, there wasn't a very empowered culture when we first came along. And I think that took a few years to really embed. Would you agree, Joe?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that old school, I mean, it was the house of fun, wasn't it? Which is one thing that a rugby club should be, but there's a lot of resources going into this rugby club, and there's a lot of potential for these young men to develop into quality people, quality leaders. And when you're investing that much resource and support into developing these guys for on-field success and on-field enjoyment and on-field connection, but also off-field development, it couldn't just stay as, you know, the fun house as such, and that hierarchical, you know, old school movie, in fact, and that sort of stuff. It was just, it's fun, you know, and I think what we've got now is a balance, you know, that we want some hierarchy because we want that passing on of the jersey side of things, you know, the legacy All Blacks type thing, and looking after this club founded in 1876. It's such a powerful thing, the Maroons and all that stuff. But at the same time, you want everybody to feel comfortable and have a voice and feel confident that they're able to talk to anybody about anything. So I think we've done really well to do that. And, you know, in the last year, again, you know, everything from gym attendances, the mental health and wellness, the charity, the extracurricular type stuff, it's all come to the fore, which is testament to this group. You know, you guys as mentors and coaches and facilitators and managers and leaders yourselves, you know, it's down to us all working together with the boys connecting with us as well. If the students didn't connect with us, they wouldn't, you know, behave the way they do. They would, you know, there would be some revolt and that side of stuff.
Sorry, I agree. I just, on that, I think the last year, and sadly it was cut short, but that for me was the best year in, you know, obviously been in 3 years. So last year was the best year in terms of, I believe, was the right culture. And you're right, you still need that hierarchy, but that's part of rugby. You know, I can remember many, many years ago walking into a Bristol team when I was an 18, 19-year-old kid. And, you know, you have hierarchy there, and you have banter, and you have a bit of flow, but actually...
just drop that, by the way.
But yeah, many years ago, Sydney, you know, but then you still had guys who were in their 30s, in their 35s, who'd still put an arm around you. Yeah. And you'd have a bit of fun with the young lad, but still there's an arm around you. You know, and I always felt part of the squad, even though, you know, Mickey taking and all that kind of happened, and that's part of rugby. That's part of life. It happens in all sports, but you've got to be on the same team together. You've got to buy in together. And if someone's got a view at 18, 19, 20 years of age, then listen to it, because it can matter. You know, it can help. And I think that this year that's happened. We've actually had people putting their hand up who normally maybe wouldn't, because they felt, you know, the environment wasn't right for them yet, or they couldn't say that yet. And this year they have, because the leaders, the environment, the culture's been set that we want people to put their hand up and say, look, I'm not happy with this, or I've got this idea. And that's the culture you want. We all learn from that, and we can all get better from that environment. So, I'm looking forward to seeing what next year brings, you know. So
it's the All Black thing, isn't it? That, you know, no dickheads.
Yeah.
And I think this year, the feedback I've had from a lot of the senior players is there are no dickheads this year, you know. And so that's what I got from doing the mentoring session with the guys. I said, you know, this is the fewest amount of dickheads there's ever been.
Won't be any next year either, will there?
Well, you know, it's kind of, but we don't have to. The All Blacks can police that, can't they? You know, with an iron rod, we can't do that. So it has to be a culture shift that comes from within.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, dickheads are just not tolerated like they used to be.
I find that whole, as the newbie, I find that whole thing so random, because I just can't believe it. You know, like I just can't believe it. It feels so different to what it is now. What you're describing, like,
yeah,
there's a few people that, you know, maybe just
I think the ego has been taken out of it. And the difference is that for me, learning over these 5 years, that you've got the ego of an individual versus, I don't know how to word it, but ultimately connection with a group, a team. You know, it's the all for one for all going down the cheesy lines. It is more important that the team and the club succeed than it is for one individual to stand out and be the man. And that's been the big difference. And also the learning, I think, with the guys in every team about, you know, the tactical stuff that we've implemented with them, you know, buying into everything. They realize that we're there to help them get better. And if they buy into the team tactics, which ultimately they're responsible for helping design as well, then they win and they enjoy it ultimately. And that's a massive part of it. But if you go off on your own, or you don't commit to your training, or you've never got the best lifestyle and all that sort of stuff, you know, that's when they realize, yeah, hands up, it wasn't the best performance, and I'm doing things for me rather than doing things for the team or the club. So I think that's been a big change as well. I think that's pretty evident. Would you agree with that, Shane?
Yeah, man. I think a good example of that is when the start of the season, when we had the forward at the front of the tee, or the first receiver on the queen, you know. Yeah. And then they really didn't like it. You know, we were saying all options on, and they were saying that, you know, the guys were saying that I don't think that's feasible. And there was a chat, you know, and ultimately it was the players' decision. Right, it's your game. You got to play it. You decide. And so they decided, and they ran with it. And I think as the season went on, I think we began to realise that we set these shapes to give us options, and we probably met somewhere in the middle. But that was an example that I think, probably 4 years ago, you might have said no. But this year we could hand that over to the players and say, okay, if this is what you want to do, you do it. You know, so a really good example of a player empowerment, and like working with a coaching team, you know, and working together, you know, because players got to play. You know, we can have a vision, but players got to play it.
Absolutely. Well, on that note then, guys, I think we'll round up on this one. Thanks ever so much again for your time on that. And we'll hopefully catch up again for some more in-depth coaching chat.
Good stuff. Cheers, guys.